It's another night of unrest in the U.S. Protests broke out across the country tonight after the Attorney General in Louisville, Kentucky announced an update in the case of Breonna Taylor. One of the officers accused in that shooting that led to her death now faces charges. This is a live look at the scene in Louisville right now with video from Chicago and Atlanta earlier in the day. Our Mary Frances Hoots is standing by with a live report on how some in Chattanooga are reacting. The latest from Louisville, 2 officers were shot tonight. They are currently at a hospital said to be in stable condition. It's still not clear whether this was related to the protests, but police say a suspect there has been arrested. Earlier, Kentucky's governor approved the deployment of the National Guard and a 9 p.m. curfew. Around sundown, protesters set fires in the downtown area and at the Hall of Justice. Police say barricades will remain in place as long as necessary. Officers in riot gear fired flashbangs in a square that's been the center of protests, but it had largely cleared out ahead of the curfew. The grand jury there in Louisville handed down 3 charges of wanton endangerment against former Louisville police officer Brett Hankison. That means the shots he fired posed a threat to the people in surrounding apartments. 2 other officers are not charged. Hankison's bullets did not impact Taylor. Many protesters and Taylor's family say they believe the 3 should face murder, manslaughter, or reckless homicide charges. 6 months ago, they were conducting a narcotics investigation using a no-knock warrant. Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, says he thought they were intruders shooting at the officers, who then fired back, killing Taylor. Locally in Chattanooga, protesters reacted to the grand jury's decision. They're led by the same group named I Can't Breathe CHA that has gathered since May 30th, saying they're fighting against police brutality. They were out in Miller Park this evening. That's where we find our Mary Frances Hoots with an update on what happened downtown tonight. Mary Frances.
Well, Greg, about 60 to 70-ish people showed up right here in Miller Park. It was a lot calmer tonight than we kind of saw back in May and June when the protests first started. So they started with some messages here in Miller Park. They marched on the sidewalks. A few weeks ago, they were told to leave the streets, and they did comply with that tonight. So they stopped on the sidewalk, specifically on both sides of the courthouse, chanting Breonna Taylor's name. The march lasted about 30 to 40 minutes. Then they ended up back here in Miller Park. They talked about divesting in our local police department. But again, tonight was all about the reaction to the Breonna Taylor decision in Louisville, Kentucky.
Breonna Taylor is our sister, and we feel awful that she was killed during that day.
Wednesday, the grand jury made a decision in the Breonna Taylor case. The woman shot in her home by Louisville police officers executing a no-knock warrant. They were reportedly fired upon by Taylor's boyfriend when they burst into her apartment. 6 months later, the charges have been announced, leaving protesters across the country upset, including here in Chattanooga.
They only charged 1 officer out of all 3 of them.
Former Louisville police officer Brett Hankison has been indicted on 3 charges of wanton endangerment in the 1st degree. The other officers involved were not charged.
I was hoping for murder charges.
Many protesters in Chattanooga wanted all 3 officers to be charged with murder. However, they weren't expecting it.
Just really devastating, but not surprising.
I'm not surprised by it at all, because it's the same thing that's been happening over for years now.
Which is what led them, they say, to take their cries for justice to the streets in Chattanooga Wednesday.
We're doing this to make a change, and then hopefully our voices will be heard.
They marched, stopping in front of the courthouse on both sides, chanting Breonna Taylor's name. LeBron Nash says he won't stop until justice is served.
We demand justice for Breonna Taylor, because all three of her murders wasn't charged properly, as the so-called justice system supposedly do it. So we're just out here demanding justice for our little sister.
And like you just saw, the main focus was on Breonna Taylor tonight, but they did spend a good chunk of the time at the end talking about divesting, investing in other communities, specifically defunding the police department. They said at a minimum they want their budget cut 15%. So going forward, they're going to continue to be on local leaders and their city council members until they see change at the local level. Reporting live in Chattanooga, Mary Frances Hooch, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.